Well, students, as you know, the organs of the central government, they are the Union Legislature, Union Executive and Union Judiciary. These are the three organs of the central government. You have studied about the Union Legislature. Now we have to study about the Union Executive. The Executive implement the laws made by the Union Legislature, because the main function, the main function of legislature is to make the laws, and the main function of executive is to implement the laws made by the legislature. And the third organ, that is Union Judiciary, that is interpretation of the laws, is the main function of the Union Judiciary. Now we study about the Union Executive. Here it is also implement the programs and policies of the Union government. It not only implement the laws made by the Union Legislature, but it also implement the programs and policies of the Union government. The Union Legislature consists of the President, Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers. The President is head of the executive only in name. Here the head of the executive, here the President of India is head of the Union Executive, but he is the nominal head of the executive. But the real head of the executive are the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Prime Minister and Council of Ministers are the real executive, or the real executives of the Union Executive. The President is only the nominal head of the executive. Here the President, according to the article number 52 of our Constitution, it has created the post of the President. The post of President is created according to the article 52 of our Constitution. The Indian President is a constitutional head of the country. As you know, he is head of the country. He is the first citizen and head of the executive, and also head of the commander in chief of all the three armed forces. He is also head of the commander in chief of all the armed forces, that is the Army, Navy and Air Force. So he is head of all the armed forces, that is commander in chief of all the three armed forces, and he enjoys the highest position in the country, and he has the custodian of the executive powers of the nation. He safeguards the executive powers of the nation. No court of law can question the conduct or prosecute him. It's like he is the first citizen, he is the head of the nation, he is head of the executive. So no court of law can question his conduct or prosecute him, because he is head of the nation. He is the first citizen of the country. Now the election of the President, article number 54 and 55 of our Constitution stipulate the way the President should be elected. The President is elected by an electoral college. President of India is elected by an electoral college consisting of the elected members of the both houses of the Parliament. How he is elected? He is elected, or he consists of electoral college, elected members of the both houses of the Parliament, and the members of the State Legislative Assembly, members of the State Legislative Assembly and members of both houses of the Parliament elect the President of India, and the Supreme Court judge administers him the oath of office. Who administers the oath of office? The Supreme Court judge administers the oath of office, and his term of office is 5 years, he is eligible for the re-election also. When he goes against the constitution, he can be removed from the office by the parliament through the motion of impeachment, as he is a guardian of the constitution. But when he goes against the constitution, that time he can be removed from his office by the motion of impeachment. Here the motion of impeachment means the president is the fundamental part of the parliament. He is the fundamental, he is the most important part of the parliament, and also the protector of the constitution. He is the protector, he is the guardian of the constitution. He ensures that no one violates the constitution. He ensures, what he ensures? No one violates the constitution. If he himself violates the constitution, that time he will be impeached. That time he will be removed from his office under the article number 61. Under the article number 61 of the constitution, the President of India can be removed when he violates the constitution. That time he will be removed. That impeachment can be carried out in either house of the parliament, and for that advance notice of 14 days should be given to the president for the debate. This should be supported by 1/4 of the members. After the discussion in the both house of parliament, 2/3 of the members vote for the motion. Then he will be impeached. That is the motion of impeachment. When he goes against the constitution, when he violates the constitution, that time he will be removed from his office through the impeachment, through the motion of impeachment. Now the qualifications to become a president of India, that a person who is to become a president of India, he should be a citizen of India, and he should have completed the age of 35 years, and he should not be qualified for election as a member of the Lok Sabha. He should be qualified for the election of the Lok Sabha, and he should not be hold any office of profit under the government. If he hold any office of profit under the government, he should resign his post. Then he can contest the election of the president. These are the qualifications required to become a president of India. Now his powers and functions. Now his executive powers. All the administration is carried out in the name of the president. All the administration is carried out only in the name of the president, because he is the head of the state. He is head of the executive. So all administrative matters are carried out only in the name of the president. The president appoints the prime minister and his council of ministers on the recommendations of the prime minister. The president has the power to appoint person to high post like attorney general, comptroller and auditor general, judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, governors of the states, chairman and members of the Finance Commission, and also the chairman and members of Union Public Service Commission, and he appoints the commissioner, the chairman and members of the election commission, and commander-in-chief has a power to elect the election commissioner, and has power to elect the commander-in-chief to the 3 armed forces, and ambassadors to different countries are also appointed by the president. These are the executive powers of the president. Now his legislative powers. What are his legislative powers? The president has a power to summon the parliament or postpone its session. He has a power to call the session of both houses of the parliament. Sometimes he has power to postpone the session of both houses of the parliament. and he may also address the joint sitting of the both houses or dissolve the Lok Sabha. He has also power to dissolve Lok Sabha. A bill passed by both houses of the Parliament can become law only with the approval, only with the consent of the President. Without his approval, without his consent, no bill can become the laws. So, a bill become law only with the consent of the laws. And the President also nominate 2 Anglo-Indians to Lok Sabha and 12 members to the Rajya Sabha. All these functions he act upon the recommendations of the Prime Minister with reference to Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. You know, all these works, all these legislative works he will do only on the recommendations of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Now, with judicial powers, the President has the power to reduce the term of the imprisonment of the criminals. You know, he has the power, only the President has the power to reduce the term of the imprisonment of the criminals. You know, sometimes the criminals are the court will give the decision for the 20 years imprisonment. That time a criminal, when he approach the judges, when he approach the President of India, that time he can reduce the term of imprisonment of the criminals. So that is, he has the power of pardon. He will excuse the criminals. So he reduced the term of imprisonment and cancel the capital punishment. He has a power to cancel the capital punishment. You know, capital punishment means death sentence. He also cancel the death sentence. And he can approach the Supreme Court for the suggestions with reference to the legal matters of the country. He also take the advice. He also can approach the Supreme Court for suggestions. For any type of suggestions, he approach the Supreme Court. Means Supreme Court advise the President in matters of the administration. So he take the help of the Supreme Court judges. Now the financial power, a finance bill cannot be introduced in the Lok Sabha without the permission of the President, because with regard to the financial bills, Lok Sabha has more powers. It cannot impose tax or it cannot spend single money without the approval of the Lok Sabha. But here the finance bill cannot be introduced in the Lok Sabha without the permission of the President. They can take the permission of the President, and it is only after President grant permission that the report of the Finance Commission and the Comptroller and Auditor General are discussed in the Parliament. Only after getting the approval, the Auditor General and Comptroller are discussed in the Parliament about the financial bill. Now his military powers, the President is Commander-in-Chief of all the 3 armed forces. He appoints the Chief of the Army, he appoints the Chief of the Navy, he also appoints the Chief of the Air Force, on the recommendations of the Union Cabinet. He also appoints all these heads. He appoints the military heads, the 3 wings military heads like the Army, Navy and Air Force, only on the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. He also declares war and peace on the recommendation of the Parliament. Declaration of war and peace is also on the recommendation of the Prime Minister and his council of ministers. So he work only on the recommendations of the Prime Minister and his council of ministers. Now his emergency powers, the President has power to declare emergency in an unnatural condition. Whenever there is a unnatural situation, whenever there is an unnatural situation arise in the nation, that time he has a power to declare emergency in the country. This is explained from article number 352 to article number 360 under the 18th chapter of the Constitution. And this concept is borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. That concept is also borrowed from the Government of India Act 1935. And effects of emergency on the fundamental rights, because when the emergency is declared, it affects the fundamental rights. Therefore, the effects of the emergency on the fundamental rights and their management is borrowed from the Constitution of Germany. Its effects and how to manage the fundamental rights, that matter is borrowed from the Constitution of Germany. Based on the written recommendation of the Union Cabinet, the President can declare emergency in the country on 3 occasions. These 3 occasions are the national emergency according to the article number 352 of the Constitution, and he can also declare state emergency according to the article number 356, and financial emergency according to the article number 360. So on these 3 occasions he can declare national emergency. He can declare emergency in the country. Now the national emergency, it means when there is a threat to the security of any area of the country or whole of it through the external attack. Whenever there is a threat from the external country, when the country is disturbed, that time the President can declare emergency power in India. He can declare emergency in the country. Here, for example, in 1963, he declared emergency power. In 1971, he declared emergency power. In 1975, he declared emergency power. When Pakistan and China attacked India, that time the country was disturbed. There was unnatural situation in the country. So that time he declared national emergency. It is also with the approval of the both houses. How we declare that emergency? With the approval of the both of the houses, he declared emergency in the country. And that emergency remains in force only for 6 months. After 6 months, it will be removed. Now the state emergency, based on the report of the governors of the state, or if the state government for any reason cannot function according to the principles of the Constitution. If there is any threat, if there is any disturbance in any state, or if it is not working according to the principles of the Constitution, that time the President can declare emergency under the article 356. For example, in Karnataka, state emergency is declared for 6 months. In total, till days, 6 times emergency is declared in Karnataka. If the approval of both House of Parliament is taken, the emergency can be continued for next 3 years. Now the financial emergency, this kind of emergency can be declared if it is felt that the financial situation of the country is deteriorated. When the financial condition of when there is a financial crisis arise in the country, that time the economic crisis or financial crisis is declared in the country, but it has not been declared till now. But that type of emergency, that is financial emergency, is not declared till now in the country. These are the emergency powers of the President. Now the discretionary powers of the President. The President can exercise certain powers without waiting for the approval of the Union Cabinet. Without waiting for the approval of Union Cabinet, he can declare or he can exercise his powers. There, he may invite the leader of any one party to form the government sometime. If no single party has got majority after the election, if no single party has not a majority, that time he can call any leader of the party to form the government. He invite the leader of any party to form the government. That is, when there is a hung parliament, when there is a hung parliament means when there is no single parties get majority, that is a hung parliament. During that time, he can invite a leader of any one party to form the government. That is a discretionary power of the President. When the parliament approves a bill and sends to him for his approval, he may return the bill for the reconsideration. Sometime he returned the bill to Lok Sabha for the reconsideration. Now he may dissolve the Lok Sabha. He has power to dissolve the Lok Sabha. These are the discretionary powers of the President. Now the Prime Minister, the Constitution provided for the Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister as its head to assist and advise the President in his administration. Here the main function of the President and the Council of Ministers is to assist, advise the President in the administrative matters. Still, it is the Prime Minister who has a real power to carry out the administration. Now today, who is in real power? Only the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers are the actual executives. President is only nominal head of the nation. The President is head of the country, whereas the Prime Minister is head of the government. Here the President who is head of the country, but the Prime Minister who is head of the government, he is head of the government. He remains in office as long as he enjoys the confidence of the Lok Sabha. When he loses the trust or the confidence of the Lok Sabha, he will resign. He and his cabinet ministers will resign. Now the powers of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister recommends the President the appointment of the ministers. He recommends the President for the appointment of the cabinet ministers and Council of Ministers. He also allocates the various portfolios among the ministers. He appoints the various ministers for various portfolios. Portfolios means the department, like the finance department, health department, education department, foreign affairs department, home department. So these are the portfolios. So he has power to allocate the various portfolios among the ministers, and his decision is final in the allocation of the portfolios. His decision is the final in the allocation of the portfolios. He is head of the government. Prime Minister is responsible for all the action of the government because he is head of the government. He coordinates the activities of various ministers. He helps the activities of other ministers. He takes greater interest in framing the policies, programs relating to planning, defense and foreign affairs. He takes more interest in making the programs and policies relating to foreign affairs, relating to planning and also relating to the defense. He takes more interest, greater interest in making the policies and programs because these three portfolios are very important. So he takes greater interest. He gives more importance to these three portfolios. And he is head of Union Cabinet. The meeting of the Union Cabinet are held under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. He also called the meeting of the Union Cabinet, and it is presided over by the Prime Minister of country. All decisions of the issues of national and international importance are discussed and decisions are taken under his chairmanship. All the decisions and discussions are taken place only under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. He is also linked between the President and the Cabinet. Prime Minister is a link between the President of India and the Cabinet, the Council of Ministers. Means he is a mediator between the President and the Council of Ministers. Now the Union Cabinet is the real executive. Union Cabinet, which is the real executive, and his ministers are in two hierarchies. There are two types of ministers. Ministers are in two hierarchies or two types. The first one is the cabinet level ministers. First one is the cabinet level minister, and the second is the ministers of the state. So these are the two type of ministers. So the ministers are in two hierarchies. Here the maximum strength of Union Cabinet is 15% of the total strength of the Parliament. The strength of the ministers, the strength of the Union Cabinet is 15% of the total strength of the Union Parliament. The Cabinet has two kind of responsibilities. The minister of every department is responsible for his administration. Minister of every department is responsible for his administration of his department. The minister of every department is responsible for the administration of his department. If he is handling the defense minister, so he is responsible for the administration of his defense ministry. So every ministers are responsible for their department, administration of his department, and has individual responsibility for the success or the failure of the department. Individual success, he has a individual responsibility. He has the individual responsibility for the success or the failure of his department. If you work properly, if you work effectively, then there is a success of that department. If you not work properly, there is a failure of his department. So individual responsibility is more important for the success of his department. The Union Cabinet has a collective responsibility. It has a collective responsibility. All the ministers work collectively. It is a collective work. So all the ministers work collectively for the progress of the nation. Therefore, the cabinet can be in power as long as it enjoys the trust of the parliament. But when it loses the trust of the cabinet, it is removed by no confidence motion. When it loses the confidence, when it loses the trust in the parliament, that time it will be removed by a motion of no confidence. So here you have to study about all these. The first Union Legislature, executive, and in the executive you have to study about the president, about his election, qualifications, term of office, his powers and functions, and also read the Prime Minister and his powers and functions, and also the Union Cabinet.